Howdy and welcome to the Strange West Podcast. I'm Trentano, your host and word hustler extraordinaire. Today we will be featuring Chapter 2 of the novel Paris High Noon by yours truly, Trentano. And once again, leading us in with his rendition of Ennio Morricone's For a Few Dollars More is the mighty Mitch Polzak and the Royal Deuces. If you like your Western guitar with a healthy dose of spaghetti, then get on over to MitchPolzak.com. That's Mitch, Polzak.com. As a special treat, I'll be showcasing an illustration of Chapter 2 by the lovely and talented Sarah Bell Springer. You can find more about her and her artwork on her Facebook page, s.bells Urban Fairy Tales, or facebook.com/sbellartwork. You can see her wonderful illustration on the Paris High Noon Facebook page, as well as on my YouTube channel for this podcast, youtube.com/user/wordhustler1. That's wordhustler number 1. Or just type in Trentano on the mustache on the top of the list. Sarah did a great job visualizing Chapter 2. She took the attention of the High Noon Showdown from words and put it into a visual snapshot. Thank you again, Sarah, for working so hard on the details. This was new for both of us, and it was great and fun to collaborate with another artist. As any writer and illustrator knows, it's a solitary discipline, and it's nice to work with an idea with others whenever you can. So once again, thank you, Sarah. Speaking of collaborations, once again we have the talented James K. Doyle reading Chapter 2 of Paris High Noon. Thank you again, James, for lending your voice to Paris High Noon. And now, without further ado, here's Chapter 2 of Paris High Noon.
Chapter 2, Paris High Noon. The Seine ran through Paris like the Colorado cutting through the deserts of the West. Granite bridges stretched their lazy stone out over the river while the gray mesa of Notre Dame sat off the muddy banks just beyond its licking wake. Only 2 white clouds floated in the bright blue sky above, like lost sheep. It seemed the Creator had decided to make up for the war by giving Paris one of its prettiest summer days. Along the Quai Saint-Michel, 6 German soldiers lounged easy outside the Happy Flower Cafe, their tunics loosened, their hair freshly cut and faces cleanly shaved to reveal battle-bronzed skin. Cups were raised and bottles passed back and forth. Laughter followed lies while the men sat content as a pack of full-bellied coyotes. Unlike their fathers, who fought in the Great War, they were victors. They felt entitled to a roll in the dust. Inside the cafe, Jean Muller had just written down the day's special on the sandwich blackboard. 2 hard-boiled eggs, choice of pastry, and coffee for 1 franc. "Erase the eggs," said Mou Boucher. "We don't have many, and the cheese will stay fresh longer." "But we don't have much cheese either," Jean said. He looked up and erased the board with his sleeve. He was a month shy of 15, but used to Mou telling him what to do as if he was 5, and what not to do, like fall in love with her. Mou didn't respond. Passing time with the boy tested her patience, which she didn't have much of to begin with. Now with the Nazis occupying France, she didn't have much hope either. "What does it matter?" Mou finally said, after Jean had written the cheese platter as the day's special. "I say we just give these jackal-laughing Boche the key to the cafe and let them have their way. They're doing the same thing to the rest of the country. Why not the Happy Flower?" Jean said nothing. His mother, still in the hospital from a nervous breakdown after the Blitz, insisted Jean open the cafe. Jean tried to argue, but his mother said, "Where will we go? What will we do? Refugees choked the roads like a 1,000-head cattle drive headed to the southern cities. Those who had money stood in line with tens of thousands of others for the next steamer out of Marseille. The Malheur family had no money, no car, no family outside of Paris. So until things changed, they would stay put. For her part, Moo was tired of being in her small room in the back of the cafe, which was nothing more than a storage closet. Although she'd stayed inside so far, Moo didn't find the soldiers that frightening. They seemed content to sit, drink, and speak their horrible language at each other, acting more like rude tourists than invaders. She watched as Jean put the blackboard outside, where the soldiers were getting drunker and meaner. Moo's heart quickened. She balled up her fists and squeezed her eyes shut. When she opened her eyes, Jean was coming back inside. "Hey, you in there!" one of the soldiers shouted in horrible French. "Bring another bottle, and make it the good stuff." "And don't try to poison us either," said another. Jean went behind the counter to grab a bottle. "I'll take it to them." "No," Moo said. "It's my turn." Jean protested, but the more the boy tried to persuade Moo, the meaner she got. "This is pointless," she said, almost shouting. "What else is there? How long do you expect me to be cooped up in the cafe? Until the Boche leave and France is free? Nothing is going to happen." When she reached for the bottle, her hand shook. "The war is over. All these Boche want to do is have a drink and blow off a little steam." Moo set the bottle down and took a few deep breaths. She pressed her hands against her temples. Outside, the soldiers laughed and shouted. Moo's heart bucked like a bronco on loco weed. Jean looked up at her with big brown eyes that looked like desert dirt after a spring storm. "It's just that I'm worried." Out of all the men in Moo's life, it seemed the boy was the only one who was worried for her. She didn't know whether to laugh or curse her luck. "I'm a big girl," Moo snapped. "I can take care of myself. You think I haven't had a drunk feel me up? You think I'm some virgin who's been saving herself for you?" Jean dropped his eyes. He'd rather face 1,000 bullets than take one barb from Moo. "Quit your moping," she said. "Act like a man. You'd think we're the only ones that have to deal with a bunch of drunken Boche, the way you carry on. Wake up. The war is over and we lost. The only thing we can do is what they tell us. It's their country now." She then straightened out her hair with her fingers, stretched the wrinkles out of her skirt, picked up the bottle, and walked outside. "Ah, now that's what I'm talking about," said a soldier with a buzzard nose. "Do you mean the bottle or the broad?" asked a soldier with crooked teeth. "Hell, why not both?" the first one said, and reached for Moo's leg. Startled, Moo dropped the bottle onto the table, splashing red wine on the offending soldier's uniform. "Scheisser," he shouted. "Look what you did, you stupid bitch." Moo began to apologize, the words spilling out faster than wine onto the table. The buzzard-nosed soldier stood up. "Well, I can't go on duty with a uniform stinking of wine. I need a place to clean up." He wrapped his arm around Moo's waist and pulled her in tight. "I guess your place will do." The soldiers laughed as he tried to force a kiss, but Moo pushed him off. She couldn't understand the words coming out of his mouth, but she understood his bloodshot eyes, stale breath, and wandering hands. Jean came out of the cafe doorway. "Hares," he said, using what little German he knew, along with whatever confidence he had. "Please forgive Moo for making a mess of things. Please, take this bottle of cognac on the house." "What about my uniform?" the buzzard-nosed soldier said. Jean held out the bottle of cognac. "Please feel free to use our water closet to freshen up." "I'd rather go to this bitch's house," he replied. "I'll take that." The soldier with crooked teeth grabbed the bottle of cognac. He kicked Jean in the backside and the boy fell to the ground. "Vive la France, boys," he said, lifting up the new bottle. The rest of the table laughed, even the squint-eyed lieutenant, who knew the orders that came from headquarters. No raping or stealing. But easy victory and too much wine changed his perspective, along with the sight of Moo. "I say, this girl needs to be taught some manners," the lieutenant said. "And if anyone else wants to teach the girl a thing or two, then they are more than welcome to it. I might even have to do some teaching, eh, boys?" "Please, monsieur," Jean said on his knees. "Why fight over this one girl? I can take you to a place where there are plenty of whores." "Shut your mouth, kid." the soldier holding Moo said and pulled her in tighter. Jean tried to get up and put himself between Moo and the soldiers, but the one with the crooked teeth kicked him in the breadbasket. Jean fell flat on his face. "You Frenchies should learn to lay down like the whipped puppies you are." The men laughed, while the buzzard-nosed soldier dragged Moo into the cafe. Moo started to kick and squirm. A fat soldier grabbed her legs. Moo tried to scream, but found herself gasping for air like a fish on the banks of the Seine. "Put the girl down." The heavy voice came from the end of the cobblestone boulevard. It startled the soldiers. It was in English, spoken with subtle authority, like the whisper from a whirlwind. The squint-eyed lieutenant turned and noticed an old man with a wide silvery mustache. He wore a long linen duster and a dirty cowboy hat low on his brow. A big 6-gun rested on his hip. "I said, put the Fräulein down," Catfish said. He'd been walking down the Rue du Bac, listening to his spurs jingle along the cobblestone streets, when he heard the ruckus up ahead. Catfish rounded the corner and saw the 6 soldiers ganging up on the garçon. He'd seen many a dirty fight in his time. Usually he would mind his own business. But when they grabbed the girl, he had enough. "Old man," said the buzzard-nosed soldier in broken French, "go away before you get yourself killed." "I don't think Grandpa here speaks French," said the soldier with the crooked teeth. "He's English." "I thought all the English swam away," said a young soldier from the table. The squint-eyed lieutenant chuckled. "No, my little spud, I think our intruder is an American." "Well, I speak English." He affected a Yankee accent. "And I think it would be wise for you, how they say in movies, yes, mosey on out." "You got the lingo down right," Catfish said. "But I think it's you all who should do the moseying before there's trouble that you can't stop." The rest of the soldiers chuckled, except for one. A bull of a sergeant rose from the table. His huge hands gripped a submachine gun. He was about to raise it when he heard a loud metallic click. Catfish pulled his 6-gun and pointed its business end at the sergeant. "Hold your fire, Sergeant," said the squint-eyed lieutenant. He approached the gun-toting cowboy with his hands up. "I believe in the Wild West they had a duel." "That's right," said the fat soldier who held Moo's leg. "In the middle of a dusty street." "Correct," the lieutenant said. "A showdown." The fat soldier laughed and let go of Moo. The others stood confused. "He's going to have showdown with the old cowboy," he explained to his comrades. "Like in the movies?" said the young soldier. "Oh, this is going to be better than poking some whore," said the buzzard-nosed soldier. He let go of Moo to watch. Moo stumbled for the cafe door. Her first instinct was to grab Jean, who was still on his knees, and run as far away as possible. But just like everyone else on the empty boulevard, she was enthralled by the mysterious old cowboy, who stood alone against 6, his duster blowing gently behind him like the wings of a tired angel. So she watched from the glass window, hiding behind the painted words. "All right, you Bosch bastard," Catfish said. "You want to play 6-gun stud? Then ante up. But I want you boys to stand down and away from their rifles." Catfish pointed to the sergeant. "Especially that bull over there with the bullet sprayer." "Put your gun on the table, Sergeant. That's an order." The sergeant said nothing but stared at Catfish. "I said put the goddamn gun on the table." The sergeant placed the submachine gun on the table, leaving it within easy reach. The first bell toll of noon echoed through the streets of Paris like a wolf howling through the wide, empty prairie. The squint-eyed lieutenant walked into the middle of the boulevard facing Catfish. "On the last toll, we fire." Catfish thought this whole thing was nonsense. Never in his life in the Wild West had he been in showdown like the ones in the picture shows. He wondered at time who made those celluloid lies. Must have been a feller who slept on a pile of money. But it was 6 against 1, and playing along might give him an edge. "The last toll," Catfish said. The second toll rang out. Catfish whirled his 6-shooter off of his finger and slid it back into his leather holster. The third bell tolled. A gentle breeze blew down the cobblestone boulevard. Old tin signs creaked on their hinges. The fourth bell tolled. The squint-eyed lieutenant unsnapped the holster that secured his Luger and let his hand hover. The fifth bell tolled. The men gathered together, forgetting their rifles were stacked behind them. The sixth bell tolled. Jean looked on with morbid fascination. His first impulse was to snatch a rifle while the other soldiers were distracted, but his hands, used to working espresso machines, lay still. The seventh bell tolled. An old newspaper with headlines screaming out in bold letters the fall of France blew past the two men. The eighth bell tolled. Catfish took in a deep breath and held it. He remembered a time when Butch Cassidy shot a tin can off a fence post from 50 yards at full gallop. The ninth bell tolled. The squint-eyed lieutenant's right hand began to shake above the Luger. The 10th bell tolled. 5 pigeons flew onto the awning, watching the showdown. The 11th bell tolled. The breeze died and the air was still. The 12th bell tolled. 6 shots rang out along the boulevard while the last bell echoed off the facades. The pigeons flew away. The next sound was the tinkling of empty shell casings falling on the cobblestone street. Catfish broke open the loading gate on the Colt and began shucking out spent brass and slapping fresh cartridges into the cylinder, wishing he'd brought a Winchester instead. But he still hadn't lost his touch with a pistol or his choice of targets. The sergeant was the most dangerous man, not the drunk wanting the showdown. That's where the first bullet went, right into his chest as he made a lunge for his weapon. The sergeant crashed through the glass table and fell on his gun. The second shot went right into the squint-eyed lieutenant's forehead. Though his hand was an inch away from the Luger, he never cleared leather. The last shots didn't really matter, as the remaining soldiers were drunk and worthless. Catfish cut them down before they could turn around for their rifles. About the only one he regretted shooting was the kid. It was a bullet he wished he hadn't wasted, as he only had his gun belt and 2 boxes of cartridges. But it all happened too fast. In his old age, he couldn't get his brain to stop his reflexes. Catfish had loaded the third bullet when a roar caught him off guard. The sergeant rose up from the broken glass, the submachine gun in his hands. Catfish quickly closed the chamber on the half-filled revolver and took a shot, but the hammer struck an empty chamber. The sergeant bellowed like a mad bull as he squeezed off a burst from the MP-40, throwing his dying weight into the kicking gun. Catfish jumped and rolled as the wild shots pinged off the cobblestone around him. It wasn't the first time Catfish had found himself on the bad end of a gunfight. Still, it took all of his nerve to keep his hands steady as he raised the Colt. Again, the hammer fell on an empty chamber. A loud crack cut off the sound of the submachine gun, and the sergeant dropped dead. Catfish looked up and saw the cafe garçon holding a smoking rifle. The boy's face was white and wet. His hand shook so bad that the rifle fell. It was a reaction Catfish knew all too well. "Easy, son. Easy," Catfish said in his rough French. Jean looked up at the cowboy with teary eyes. 5 minutes ago, he wanted to kill all those soldiers for pawing Moo and kicking him around. Now the hot rage pumping through his heart had evaporated, leaving a cold, sick feeling in his stomach. Catfish took the rifle from the boy and helped him up to his feet. "You had to do it. Son of a bitch had it coming." Moo still watched from behind the glass. 6 men had died, and the minute hand had just reached the first mark of the new afternoon. Even more stunning was Jean taking up the rifle and killing the sergeant. She'd wanted to yell at him not to pick it up and get himself killed. In that violent minute, her fear and hate dissolved into a queer feeling some would call love. Jean, still in a daze, said nothing. He didn't look at Moo, the cafe, or the old cowboy. He just ran tear-blind down the boulevard.
And howdy and welcome back to the Strange West podcast. Once again, I'm Trentano, your host and word hustler. So that wraps up Chapter 2 of Paris High Noon by yours truly, Trentano. To get a copy of Paris High Noon for yourself, go to ParisHighNoon.com. If you love cowboys and dead Nazis, then go to ParisHighNoon.com for both paperback and ebook. ParisHighNoon.com. Thanks again to James K. Doyle for providing his voice talents to Paris High Noon. Been getting a lot of compliments on the guy who's reading, so keep up the good work, James. And another big thank you to Sarah Bell Springer for her illustration of the Chapter 2 showdown. You can see her interpretation at the Paris High Noon Facebook page. Please like and leave a comment. Seeing us out, as always, is the mighty Mitch Polzak and the Royal Deuces with Eno Maricones for a few dollars more. This is Trentano, and on behalf of the Strange West podcast and Paris High Noon, we'd like to wish you a happy trails, and we'll see you next time.